So if it's not for insurance purposes, let's say you want to sell your art, you want to know what its value is in terms of a resale valuation. It's a little bit of the same. You might not gross it up so much. And then I think the last category, a lot of us are thinking about donations for tax write-offs, and that's simply a purely fair market value. What is a willing buyer willing to pay a willing seller, right? And again, it's on comparables, right? I'm going to look at Jimmy Holmes. I appraise his work. Derek for sure. Who are the peers? What has sold recently? Because you need something to substantiate the value you're going to place on that piece with, and it's going to be works that are similar size, created in a similar year, and a similar likeness, mediums, as close as possible in a similar time frame to make the case. What is an appraisal? It's an opinion of value. So if you appraise the same piece I appraise, will we get to the same place? Probably not, because she's going to appraise it through her lens and experiences. I'm going to appraise it through mine. But we're going to want to have comparables that we can stand behind to justify why we made the decision. And sometimes this is necessary just in a conversation around, Candy wanting to buy a piece and wanting to know is she spending too much or too little. Other times it's in a court of law where the IRS is challenging me about why I valued something in the millions, and I'm going to want to say it's because of these comparables. So it's a profession we take very seriously, and that is why the comps from the auction market are important, because they're real and they're respected. They have credibility. But I think our artists are getting there, and it's a fascinating field, and I'm happy to take other questions after we close to give somebody else an opportunity. I see another hand up, though.
Is this working? My name is Anthony Green. I am the Director of Risk Management Services for Picture That, and I'm the lucky guy that is going to have Valerie as my wife next year. That's a good acquisition. That's a good. There are no comps. There are no comps. Trust me. I look. I want to say something about digital art, and whether it's tied to NFTs and you can maintain the value for the artist is an end, but there's a greater end, and that is educating the world about who we are. A lot of what we face is because white people do not know who we are. So digital art, whether it's NFTs, whatever, that art making it into the world, like music, like publishing, those industries are gone now because of the internet. There is no more magazines and newspapers. There's Napster for music. It's happening to art. So there will be art that's digital that will not be protected, but it will still have a tremendous value in educating the world about the value of our people. So I don't want you to lose that, and I'll leave you with this last statement. In 1933, there was a book written by G. Carter Woodson called The Miseducation of the Negro. You would think it was written today, but one of the things he said was this: every great culture has controlled their art. The Greeks, the Jews, all control. We don't control ours. We don't distribute it. So however we distribute it, digitally or not, will improve the plight of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. All right, hang on. Let me give you. Daniel, you had a question? Okay, say who you are, please.
My name is David Amonte. I'm a local artist of Florida, descendant to the Zulu and Ashanti people. My question is more of a opener for conversation between all of y'all. I don't really got one for like one specific person. And it's more of a two-part question, so to say. But basically my question is, what's the importance of indigenous futurism as far as reclaiming our ascent spiritual sciences, not religions, our spiritual sciences, our esoteric practices, our philosophies, our ideologies, the inventions that we've created thousands of years ago that were seen as so advanced that they thought aliens came down and created it, or they didn't think we created it all. And so their science was able to catch up with it. And by there, I mean our oppressor science was able to go out and say, okay, the Dogon weren't lying. Sirius B does exist. That star is heavier than anything we know of in like our known world, and things such as that. So what's the importance of taking that indigenous culture, put it in a futuristic sense, and then using it in the art world as combat towards the modern day oppressors? That's my question for y'all.
That's a pretty light question. We should take it, right? Hey, let's try to answer some of it, right? Sure, because I spend a lot of time also digging into the past to try to create a better future, right? So, and my indigenous science, as I practice it today, I worship the sun, and I also am into astral traveling. And when I create my shows, a lot of it is connected to my ancestors, right? And that's a practice that comes from my past as an African, right? And what I think is going to be true in the time that we're living is as we start to really get a better understanding of how important and how vast it is to be a human. The Buddhists say that to be a human is the highest form of life. And every day I go out there to do the sunrise, and I'm praying and meditating, and I'm taking a journey that allows me to understand that my mind, body, spirit, and soul is the universe. It allows me to come up with solutions, I think, because I think a lot about the Black problem. You know, we've been in slavery for 500 years. And so how do we get out of it? Through spirituality. So we really have to work that. Now, the system that we're in, the Western education system, doesn't allow us to move beyond rational thinking in some ways, right? But as humans, we can, you know, when I say that the brother that I ran into in France, who is now here connecting to me, I literally feel like I've known him for thousands of years. When we talk, well, you know, nothing in the universe is random, right? So what would be the chance that I would go to a film festival in France and be next to someone who is an African that has a very similar point of view like mine? And then our interaction is really changing me, right? And so that's the technology I'm interested in, right? I'm into right now, my focus is on Black Renaissance, right? What does that mean? I'm not interested in nationality. I'm really interested in spirituality. And for me, the goal is to really get at a point where I am connected to divine resources in a way that what I think becomes reality. What I speak becomes reality. Who I am is a representation of the highest form of life in the universe. So that's the kind of indigenous technology I'm interested in. Dr. Chen.
We welcome you coming to the next panel discussion in 10 days. No. When you speak of indigenous, and I started to say that when I was presenting, because English is a very peculiar language. So when we say indigenous in some circles, persons only think of a Indian looking entity, yeah? And when people that are original say indigenous, we're speaking of our ancestral, ancient African And I'm going to say it, Nubia Nu, Kushia Nu, Kemetu Heritage Legacy, right? Because then we're talking about an Ankh legacy. And I want to explain that real quickly. We're talking about eternity, and we're speaking about life, and incorporating that in the context of the arts. We're speaking of the arts and sciences that govern the entire womb-niverse. Notice I didn't say universe. When we speak of it in that space of liberty, and we speak of that indigeneity, then we're speaking of it from a place where we can actually speak to anyone from whatever ethnicity or whatever cultural expression and whatever. I mean, there were things people kept asking me when I was in Dubai, are you comfortable here as a Black woman? Are you comfortable here? I said, I'm comfortable on the earth, on the entire earth. And then not to say that it's not challenging, but I feel very comfortable in the, not just my skin, but in my spiritual body, soul self, yeah? And it's not to say I have it like that all the time. There are days I just get vexed and I want to go off and cuss. But I mean, because the human piece, right? However, I go very deep on that space rather of indigeneity. And I'm humble enough that if I'm really wrong, which does happen, because we're imperfect, yeah, I have to go within and just, oh, I've learned some powerful lessons from this experience, so that way I'm not in a space of ignoring my indigenous ancestral presence. Like, and I'm saying that from a place that, you know, this is something that we could reason on for hours and for lifetimes, because that's something, again, look at these art pieces. Look at what's, we're having this discussion, and these art pieces are resonating vibrational energy on every single person in this room, whether they think it or not. They could say, well, I feel a little bit awkward right now. You know, I feel a little bit spooky, you know. But at the end of the day, it's like our macrocosmic orbit, our microcosmic orbit, all of that energy, the vibe that we talk about is being permeated through all of these pieces. And then the art that every one of us in here that are artists, which is everybody, are going to create, whether it's a doodle, whether it's how you do your culinary gastronomy thing and cook. You understand? I see some hands go up on food. Okay. Whoop, whoop. You know how we deal with our hair, our attire. What do we do when we start putting flowers from the garden in the bathwater? There's an art to that. How do we engage in healing, right? All of that is part of that indigenous piece. So everyone, and I'm, you know, as you were listening, I'm sure you heard that. Everyone was speaking of that indigeneity, even if they didn't use the word indigenous, even if they just spoke of their cultural experience, how they perceive and see things, so that we can actually be in a place of opening it up wider, like really wide. So when I speak of the womb-niverse, I'm speaking of it not just from a woman's space, but I'm speaking of that whole loving vibration that can undo all this hate and warfare that exists on the planet. And it's not to say it happens all the time, because we still got some crazies in the zone, right? But the more that we do it, practice makes for improvement, not necessarily perfection, but it makes for improvement. And it becomes our behavior. And that shifts so that it's how we live. And that way we can do exactly what I said earlier, the fusion of culture, healing, arts, technology, spirituality for life all the time. We're going to reason on that conversation. I like that question.
All right, Aja, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aja, and I have a nonprofit called CADA Network for Visual Artists. My question is for Julie Walker. You have been in the art history realm as well as the media realm well before we got introduced to NFTs and the metaverse, and been on the beating path and holding the pulse this entire time, no matter how much it's fluctuated. And so I was hoping you could shine some light, or even potentially give some artists some advice on what also might be to come with the metaverse as you have experienced media transition from newspaper to TV to social media, and now we're experiencing a new layer?
I'm just learning about it myself, as a matter of fact, and I'm just trying to familiarize myself. But in our talk last year, one of the things I said is, learn about it, ignore it at your own peril, because we've often been left behind. And that's something that has been discussed by various people in different sort of ways of saying it, but we've been left behind oftentimes. So we need to make sure that we don't get left behind in the metaverse or with NFTs. I'm going to bring up the ICA again, because I was there on Friday when Yuga Labs donated the one of the, what are they called? Technopunks? No, what are they called? CryptoPunks. Thank you. They donated CryptoPunk number 305. The CryptoPunks were, before the pandemic, they were given out by the guys who created them. Now they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So one of them was donated to the museum, and now they're showing up in the museums. So ICA now has two. I mean, this is something that is big, and it's not going to go away. And this goes to a question that somebody else asked about valuation, and I'm not sure if you were asking about valuation in terms of because you want to resell, or because you're an artist and you want to know how a dealer values work. But if something ends up in a museum, the value shoots up. So those NFTs are never, they're showing up in museums, so that their value is going to go up. And Yuba Labs, or whatever they're called, they're planning on gifting a bunch of those to museums, so that value is only going to go up. So I think it's very important to jump on that, but in a way that makes sense for you as an artist. I mean, I went to the Beeple talk last year where his NFT broke records last year. So I think it's something that you have to think about, pay attention to, and get in on in a way that makes sense for your art. But then who did it that didn't make sense? Was it Jay-Z or someone like that? Did one with one of the auction houses that made no sense at all, and it undersold. I forget whether it was Jay-Z or someone like that. That was like, I guess, last year or something. So it has to be smart, and I don't know about it. I mean, I'm learning too. And I when I went to the ICA, I learned a lot on Friday night. So, and maybe you know more, because I hear someone over there, but one of my colleagues on the panel. But I mean,
I wanted to ask the next question to Candy. Oh, Randy. Is it Candy? Candy. I'm sorry. My eyes are getting messed up, man. I'm looking at this thing.
I've been called Randy. It's
all right, Candy. I love what you're doing there. Nova's in Davie, right?
Correct.
So I want y'all to put that in context. See, Davie is probably the most at one time was the most racist city in Broward County. The Ku Klux Klan had its stuff there a lot. And in fact, the assistant chief of police here, Wayne Jones, when he moved down here, his dad told him two things, two places you don't go, Davie and Miami Beach. Mm-hmm. So to see that you're there now creating these different spaces, to me, is mind-boggling because of the context, right? I would never think that Davie would even allow that stuff. Yeah. And so please talk about how you did that, and if you've gotten any weird responses because of the type of arts, because I know it's not like simple stuff, it's very, very aggressive that you're bringing up there. What's been the effect?
Well, I have been at NOAA for 7 years. I got a full-time position right after grad school. I graduated from FAU Boca which was a totally different experience for me too. And I was blessed. The energy lined up for me to get that Nova position because the person that was there was a white woman, right? And she's been there for 10 years. And she was the program director there. So she took me in because they need diversity. Like that's one of the things people just like, you check the box, like we got one, right? So now we're diverse. But my mission was always to bring in and to also talk about otherness and otherness within the art world, even in the small city of Davie. So there are a lot of students. As a student, you look up to your teachers. Like I was one, like I have my mentors because they're important because they guide you. I called my mentor today. Like it's one of the things that I think it's really important, especially for young adults to have. And we're all hypocrites in our life. Like you try not to be, but there's certain things that end up happening, right? Where like you say one thing and you do the complete opposite thing. And I tried to like go against that. So if I am the one minority in the art department who happens to now be the program director, it's important for me to showcase what's not seen. Even if the president of the university has issues with it, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to put it in because I'm there. So it's important for my students to see that there's other things that you can do besides entertainment. You don't have to choose the basketball route. You don't have to choose the sports route. You don't have to become this idea of what your parents want you to be, like a doctor. You can pursue the arts. There are lots of different spaces and places that you can go within the art realm that brings up creativity that we need to solve issues that are happening in this world. So I like to challenge. It like feeds my soul.
I'm glad that you're getting supported there because being in that space, make sure that you bring up other people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You get that one, and once you go, it snaps back.
Right. Yeah, it's my mission.
Reaching back as your client and dating.
Yep.
I'm gonna check it out too. I'm up and proud.
All right, thank you. Okay, I just wanted to plug Chester's book. Chester's a good friend out of New York. He has a book called The Sacred Nile. We have it here for sale. We also have some Purvis Youngs for sales and some t-shirts for sale. I hope you enjoyed the event. Continue to support CADA. Thank you, panelists, for such an outstanding event. It's 3:00. And we hope that you'll hang around for a minute and do some networking. Mr. DJ.